waxaa noo jooga xooghayaha qaraamada midoobay u qaabilsan dalka Soomaaliya oo wax ka weydiin doona shirkii maanta sidoo dhacay. Ambassador, welcome to Universal TV.
Thank you.
If you could sum up what went on today and the day before.
Well, it's an extraordinary situation for Somalia because the day began with a reminder of how tough life is for the majority of Somalis because of the drought. 6.7 million people, by the latest calculation, are now living in conditions of great stress, and 3.2 million of them in acute stress. And the risk of famine has not completely gone away. At the same time, there is real optimism about the politics in Somalia. The federal state structure is coming together. We have a president who's been elected through a more legitimate and inclusive process. And we've had a recent agreement on the security architecture, which is important not only for security, but because it begins to outline the relationship of the federal government with the federal member states. And also it's going to drive an economic agenda because somebody has to pay for all this. We've got the constitutional review coming up, and we heard really good things about the plans for that. So the question is, how can we match the good politics with the really tough conditions facing Somalis, and how can we use the good politics to prevent Somalis from ever having to face these terrible circumstances that the bulk of the population is experiencing right now?
What is the difference between the new deal in Brussels led by the European Union and the new international partners for Somalia?
This partnership covers both security, development, and political aspects. The security aspect is that the international community commits to a more coherent approach to supporting Somalia as long as the Somalis stick to their security architecture. So the question is that going to be implemented, and can the international community be more coherent in the way they support Somalia? Right now you've got lots of countries providing generous support, but they're not really as coordinated with each other as they should be. In terms of socioeconomic, what's good about today is the government set out some fairly clear plans in agribusiness, in livestock, in infrastructure, in energy, and it's saying we are open for business, but there's a number of things that we need to happen if things are going to take off, including a pathway to debt relief and arrears clearance, maintaining remittances, strengthening public financial management, fighting corruption. And then in the political area, there's been discussions around the constitutional review, making sure that's inclusive, that addresses things like the status of Mogadishu, the relationship of the federal member states with the federal government, resource and revenue sharing, things like that, as well as the pathway to one person, one vote, as well as the importance of maintaining a human rights-based approach. I don't think that the New Deal was as detailed or as comprehensive a few years ago as the kind of discussions we've had today and as the elements that are underpinning the new partnership agreement.
Does stronger army, Somali army, would look like in the eyes of the international community?
What would a stronger army look like? I think it's one that is acceptable to all Somalis, so that if a military unit goes to Bosaso or Kismayo or Merka or Baidoa or Adado, they will be acceptable because everyone will know that the army belongs to everyone. Strength of an army is not just in numbers. The strength of an army is whether you trust it. I mean, we happen to be in the UK. If you see someone in an army uniform, people tend to be, it doesn't matter which part of the UK you come from or which part of the UK the soldier comes from. You trust it, and that gives it its strength.
But you can't really compare UK army with the Somali.
Certainly not.
Member states, can you?
No, you can't, and I think that's the point about the political agreement, is they're now going to say we're going to figure out how do we have an army that belongs to all Somalis? How do we have a police force that is trusted by the local population? And that is, I think, one of the biggest problems that we've had in Somalia for decades, even in the last 10 years since there's been a lot of support, is that it is, as you say, very clan-oriented. A lot of people don't trust the units that turn up, and other problems are they haven't been regularly paid. So there's been all sorts of problems. And the good thing about this conference, which I don't think has ever happened before in a conference on Somalia, and there have been a lot of conferences, is real frankness, both on the Somali side and on the international side, about some of the political deficiencies of the security forces, and a commitment to try and sort that out. The next step is, are we going to be able to sort it out?
Action on the ground. That's what's needed.
Yeah. That needs to happen next. But you need a political agreement both among the Somalis and between the Somalis and the international community, and that's going to be the heavy lifting now. Is it really going to happen? Militia integration. Are we really going to, as the government's saying, make sure that everybody who receives a salary in the SNA or the SNP really is, capable of fulfilling those functions?
Yeah, that's a really important point here, because often I hear Somalis and the international community saying behind closed doors that the international community would not support the army that exists at the moment for simple reason, because they're dominated by a single clan, whether they're in Mogadishu or Garowe or Adado, as you mentioned, and any other places. So how are we going to find a unified Somali army that is professional and capable to defend Somalia?
Well, the irony is you, a Somali, are asking me, a non-Somali, how we're going to do that. I mean, Okay, but I mean, my point would be there has to be a political agreement among Somalis as to how you do that. What is the basis upon which people are going to be recruited? What is the doctrine of the officer corps? To whom is the army accountable? And if you look, I really encourage your viewers, if they're interested in this, to look at the security agreement that was reached on the 17th of April, and it sets out how some of these things are actually going to be done.
Okay, Ambassador, thank you very much. Grateful to you.
Pleasure.